this condition and removed the electronic speed control to fault find, it definitely is that. I've refitted it to show you guys the layout, which is why you see these broken wires. A quick walkthrough. This is the 6-cell lithium-ion battery. This is the battery management system. This is the receiver, the Bluetooth module. This particular Chinese clone is the earlier version. There's a couple of tweaks they made to the second version. The earlier one had this particular controller, which is compatible with that Bluetooth module. It does the trick, but there's no feedback mechanism, there's no light showing how the condition of the battery, either in the hand controller or on the board. They improved it with this controller, which the Magneto board and all the recent Chinese clones use, and you have lights here on both sides showing the condition of the batteries. You can retrofit that to these boards, but when you get this, you need to make sure you have the compatible Bluetooth receiver. Anyway, that's that side of it, and the electronic speed controller itself is here. The one I bought is more or less exactly the same. Physically, it's exactly the same, which means it's going to be a simple drop-in replacement. You can use other electronic speed controllers, but that will mean having to hack away a bit at the plastic struts here and here. But that's not such a big thing to do. But for now, I'm going to keep it simple and fit a standard electronic speed controller which matches this, more or less. I'm going to try to remove this one-handed. Bear with me. As a safety measure, always disconnect the main battery and everything. Okay, now this is a simple replacement. There aren't many leads. You have this one here, the receiver. You have this one here, power leads. The ones to the motor have already been cut. If you decide to cut yours, do make sure the cut is on the inside here of the hole here, not the outside. When you come to reconnecting it, you want the joint on the inside where it gets more protection. You don't want it on the outside here going to the motor. I think that's it. Yes. So put that to one side. Now the two speed controllers themselves. They're exactly the same, made by the same company and everything, with two differences. One here has a capacitor here, this doesn't. Having said that, in my Magneto board up there, which is also awaiting repairs, you can see it there, that one had the capacitor as well. So this sometimes comes on these boards as standard, sometimes they don't. What doesn't seem to come on the boards as standards is that plug there. It's not on this one here. I have a feeling that these are modified at the factory so that they're pre-calibrated and cannot be changed. I had a look at this when it was working and trying the different ways of calibrating it via the reset switch here, and I couldn't do it, it was fixed. I couldn't recalibrate it at all. So I think it's exactly the same, apart from the fact that they've locked it down, as it were. There's no socket here for changing the settings. And on this one, the reset switch doesn't do anything. Not that I can find anyway. So, if you buy that, it will replace this, and it's a drop-in replacement. Now, if you do get this, you're looking for, yes, it's a Brave Wolf 6S 120 amp or 120A electronic speed controller. If you type that into Google, you will find these. You can find them in the UK, a bit more expensive. You get them in Hong Kong very cheaply, but it takes ages to get here. Fitting the electronic speed controller is easy. You have a couple of leads which simply plug in. This just drops into the holder here. Anything of any note is the motor leads, and they are colour coordinated, so there's no problem there. It's just physically attaching them. You can solder and shrink wrap them, you can use bullet connectors or whatever. I'm going to use the terminal strip. If you do this, be careful because the metal is exposed, although it is recessed. But you want them done up very tight. There's high current going through these leads. You don't want any short circuits. The reason why I'm using this is that it's very likely I'm going to try other speed controllers in this board in the future. So it just helps me swap them over. Filming myself fitting this one-handed is going to be difficult, so I'm going to do it in stages. The first thing, I think it's going to be that to that, via that. So, back in a second. That's the wires from the electronic speed controller going to the motor. Do be careful when you do this, that you want the sleeve, the rubber sleeve, to go into the plastic, but you don't want it to go under the screw there. You want that to bite into the wire, or the wires, the strands that are inside that sleeve. You want good contact going through, but you do want this to go into the plastic to give good insulation on the outside. So keep that in mind when you do that bit. The lead for the receiver, there's 3 holes which correspond to the 3 prongs here. You have 2 sets. You have the bottom set for the second channel and the top set for the first channel. You want that to go into the top set, and you want the middle side facing upwards. So simply slots to the top, power to the ESC next. You don't want that, you want this one. I can't do that one-handed, so give me a second. Okay, that's plugged in. And the last one is the power from the battery. This should always be undone first and done up last. Again, I can't do that one-handed, so give me a second. Okay, that's the last socket plugged in. Now it's all finished. It's not been positioned finally, but all the connections have been made. Something I should have pointed out at the beginning was to make sure that the on-off switch here is off. This is the electronic speed controller. Put this on now. Before I turn this on, something to keep in mind. Do you remember when I said that these were pre-calibrated? Well, you can see that for yourself when you turn it on for the first time. The sequence of beeps are different. So if I do that, very different. And get the controller. Turn it on. That changes to actually flashing in that. Forward. And reverse. This doesn't have reverse. Because this hasn't been calibrated. Reverse is there. I'm going to show you how to do the final fitting, although I'm not going to actually do the whole thing because I've still got to calibrate this. But when you come to finishing it off, probably the most trickiest bit is getting that to fit comfortably in here. It takes a bit of manoeuvring. Again, I can't do it one-handed, so give me a second. There's a plastic prong here, which I find best to fit between these 2 wires. That fits in snugly. It should be level across the top there. That. The on-off switch, you don't want that to be accidentally switched off, so what I tend to do is slot it in there, like so. You want this terminal strip, or however it is you join the wires, to be on the inside of the socket hole there. These things you do a bit of jiggery pokery, make sure they're all below the surface of the board. The trickiest thing here is when you flip it over. So what I tend to do is use a bit of tape, like so. It's a bit tricky because there isn't much for it to purchase or stick onto. But it's just got to hold that in place as I flip it over. Which I'm going to do now, and it's impossible to do one-handed, so give me a second. Like so. Do check that the electronic speed controller is perfectly centered in the hole here, and that everything fits snugly. So it should all squeeze down against the board without too much force, without any gaps all around. Ignore this mastic, that was a failed experiment. I was trying to make it a bit more water resistant. Anything to be careful of here, really, is apart from turning it over and pushing it down and not forcing anything, and making sure the holes are all lined up, is that when you screw the bolts in, don't over tighten them, because they can protrude from the other side. Which I've done in the past. There's a slight, so you can see here, there's a slight raised dome. It's happened a few times as you go around the board. One last check. And reverse, bizarrely. Okay, that's the physical fitting of it. Check the next video to see how I calibrate that electronic speed controller.